because we had a number of people who asked if we're going to record this because they were unable to make it, and reintroduce ourselves. So by saying, hello, my name is Ben, and I'm a member of the Provincial Resource Team, and I would like to welcome you to a webinar that we are calling Grants and Measures and the CLC Approach. So, Bobby, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And actually, I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second because I want to make sure I did the right thing, which is to press the 2 buttons. Perfect. Okay. You can still see it?
No, now there's a big box in front and it's the wrong screen.
Let me do that one more time, please. Apologies. Okay, now can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi, everybody. Welcome again to the webinar. Again, we are calling our webinar today, Grants and Measures to Support School Community Partnerships. And we would like to thank you all for being here. Just to do a quick check, we're going to be going through some slides talking about, again, best practices around writing grants and measures. We're going to hear from a school principal around this as well. And then at the end, there's going to be time for discussion, talking about the different grants. If at any point there is a question or something you'd like to add, feel free to raise your hand, and Bobby will invite you to speak. So Bobby, take it away.
So what is a grant? A grant is a sum of money that is given by a government or a charitable organization, a foundation. It could be a company. It could even be a specialized grant-making institution, usually given to an individual or an entity. So like a school, for a specific purpose that is usually linked to a public benefit. Okay, it could take all those forms. It could be an award, a donation, a bursary, but unlike a loan, grants do not get paid back. So the funder gives it to you. You may need to provide the funder at the end with some sort of a report with photos and a tally of your final budget, but you don't need to worry about returning any monies or reimbursing this. Next slide, please. So grants, we can find many grant opportunities. You can do a quick Google search for them using keywords. For us here, you can put in Quebec or education. You can ask other CDAs, your colleagues. People will often tell you, they will share great opportunities that they have come across. We here at the PRT can steer you in the right direction to some opportunities. You can also get referrals either from your school board representative or your principal. But your principal can also let you know about mesures that are targeted specifically to issues that are in the schools. So there's lots of different places you can get some. Next slide. Now, this is a document that was created by Debbie at the PRT. These are some of the mesures that you may be able to access by speaking to your principal. Principals are the ones who apply for these. But the good thing about looking at the mesures is that they are specifically targeted to issues in your school. So this here in particular, it says cluster of MEQ mesures, 15,000 to 15,350. Mesures provide additional support to teachers and students, apply to general youth, adult, or vocational educational activities. So you see that, promote the educational success of Aboriginal students, the spirit of entrepreneurship. There's one that's related to the fight against climate change. So depending on what the need is in your building, you can find a mesure that is targeted specifically to that need. So you can go in and take a look. We will share this with you later on. But if you have applied for a mesure, and I know a couple of Ruby and Tanya mentioned earlier, those mesures that you have applied for that you see are not in our document, send them to us if you think they should be. That way we can add them to the document itself. Okay.
So in addition to the mesures that we spoke about, we also wanted to feature some different grant opportunities. So over the past years, the PRT has put together kind of a grant list. It's always kind of being updated because things are always changing, but it is a wonderful resource in terms of identifying potential grants and you know, just simply clicking on it, getting a sense of it, and then clicking on it and seeing if it's something that you might want to apply for. And, you know, I'll just zoom out big picture for 1 second. And just to mention that, you know, we're talking about measures and grants because part of the role of the community development agent is to help meet the needs of school and community, most often in partnership with a community organization. So applying for these measures or grants is just a great way to kind of bring in some extra resources that help, I'll use the word grease the wheels of really awesome projects and allow teachers and students to, you know, do things that they may not be able to ordinarily do without these additional resources. So, and that's quite exciting. So next, we wanted to, well, let me put it this way. When it comes to mesures, I know they exist. I hear that different CLC schools and principals apply for them, but not being a principal myself, it was always a bit of a mystery as to you know, what's the deal with a mesure and who can apply for it and what is the process. And so in the spirit of, if you don't know the answer, you should ask somebody, we decided to speak to a CLC principal, Stephen Carroll from John Adams Memorial, which is an elementary school part of the Riverside School Board. And you're going to watch a 12-minute conversation with a CLC principal and he's going to share some tips and experiences. So so grab your popcorn and please enjoy for the next few minutes. Should we just jump in?
Yeah, shoot.
So the reason why let me start again. The reason why I wanted to speak to you was because I know you've been involved with different grants and different measures to help your awesome school, John Adams Memorial. And I was like, hey, we need to talk to a principal to get the real deal. Help our community development agents and CLC principals.
Yeah.
So I thought I would start by asking you if you could maybe just describe a measure that you applied for and how it was used.
Okay, there are a few. Well, normally we get our basic mesures from the government, the École inspirante, the à l'école on bouge, seuil minimal. Those are the basic regular ones that we get. But there are also some of the mesures that you have to apply for. One prime example is the outdoor beautification, so l'embellissement des cours d'école. So that's one where you have to do some fundraising in advance in order to get monies from the government. We added a new play structure and multiple learning gardens and outdoor shaded areas. So that the year we applied, it was, if I'm not mistaken, 80% it was 60% school funds raised and 40% the ministry, and up to $50,000. So that's already $50,000 from the government if you can maximize your percentage, and that's where you get your PPO to help out, or your home in school, however it's called at different boards, to help out with the fundraising. That's one where it may take a year or two to actually get to amass enough funds, but it's a measure that can be applied for every year. And I know now, I think the ministerial involvement is more. So it's still $50,000 max, but you don't have to raise as many funds in order to acquire that. There's also the sensibilisation à la réalité autochtone, which is one that last year we were able to get up to $8,000 in funds from the ministry. just by dropping a project and letting them know this is what we're doing for the sensitization of our Indigenous knowledge. So we came up with a project at the school, submitted it, and it was approved. There's there are a few others that do pop up from here and there. You just have to go ahead.
Well, I guess in you answering the question, it became clear why I wanted to speak to you, which is as a non-school principal, it's always been a bit of a black box, the measures. And so this kind of leads to my next question, which is if you could talk a little bit about the process of applying, specifically who can apply.
Yeah. So we have the process of collect info, which is the ministerial portal in regards to either requesting for measures, reporting on them as well, any communications that need to go through the schools directly to the ministry. It all goes through collect info, and that's the main way we apply for these measures. In regards to what the government offers, they also through the collect info put in those requests and those projects that can be funded, and it's pretty much just keeping up to date with what's there, seeing what's available, looking at the parameters, and there's always someone to contact at the board level. Another one where I had to do a lot of communication was the projet numérique, innovation numérique. So we actually applied to do a gaming program with a programmer who used to work at Ubisoft but now went private. So that one was a bit difficult because I mean, we did apply. It was lengthy. You get your staff involved. As the school leader, like I took my technology committee and a techno-pedagogue that we have at the school to be involved in that, and you can easily have them added to the list as collaborators, and then you develop your project, you have it going. And that's one thing where maybe some school principals might not be very aware of is the addition of the school collaborators to collect info. It doesn't always have to be you the one filling in the entire project idea. You can easily add you can add collaborators. It does take a bit of work, and depending on the school board and the person, there may be an overseer at the school board level that may have to assist you in that, but you can add collaborators and they can work on the project. So even though it might look super interesting, knowing the principal's reality, you might be like, you know what, I'd like to, but I have no time this year. There's no shame in asking your staff and seeing who wants to do it, and even asking your community development agent. Ours is Brian Petter, and Brian is phenomenal. So having him as a collaborator on some of these projects also helps with making sure that we do get the funds for these projects.
So just so I understand correctly, is the principal kind of has to initiate the process, but they can include other people?
Most definitely.
Does the principal need to kind of keep the school board in the loop, or is that just a resource to help out?
It's a resource to help out. In our regards for the Riverside School Board, we do have an office agent at the school board level. That's she's also the secretary for the director general, so that helps out in knowing what's coming through the pipeline. She helps out with making sure that if there are any questions with collecting info, we can easily use her as our internal resource. And I'm almost positive every school board has someone like that. But knowing what's there, we have to report often enough on collecting info. We get emails every time something's deposited in there as well. So it's to go and check to see what the parameters are. And if it's interesting, don't use well, it's interesting, but I don't have time for this. Try and find people that can help you out with that process in order to fill in the documents. And sometimes it's not all that long.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Really not that long.
And this kind of leads to my last question, which is, given your experience, what insight do you have regarding identifying a school community need and then applying for the measure and then successfully meeting that need through a project? Mm-hmm. And any thoughts from your experience?
I think the mesures that are available to us, one, they're not plentiful for mesures. Like I often refer to a document from Loisirs et Sports Montérégie because we're on the South Shore, and they have a huge list of all grants and sponsors that are available. So we often try and hit that up. But at the same time, whenever something does pop up in Collect Info, it has to do with something that's going on in the school. And whether it be technology, whether it be sensitization to Indigenous cultures, whether it be entrepreneurial projects, whether it be sustainability measures, that it has to, or school beautification. These are all very school-centered measures that are available to us, and it's just pretty much taking the time to look at the documents that are there. And I said before, there's always a contact person at the ministerial level. So to send them an email and just, hey, can we chat for a little bit? And they've been super helpful. It's and usually they respond quite quickly. So to have them support you in the project is super helpful. Just one that another one that I guess talking to you, I realize more and more that, yeah, I have used a lot of grants from the mesures. Our farm to table project at the school and our whole gardening initiative was pretty much instigated by the entrepreneurial grant, which it's not much. It's $1,500, but it allowed us to go on to Aux Entreprendre, which gave us a lot of resources and a lot of strategies in order to get more funds. And then we were able to apply to other areas, and it was the spawn of many other things. And just to spawn the idea in the school, we were able to reach out to our local case Desjardins, and we have a hydroponic station growing. We hired a chef who's working with the kids. And now we have a full-on farm-to-table project, and we're going to start feeding the staff and the kids shortly. So, I mean, it's the impetus of many other things afterwards. So it's a great trampoline.
That is a great example, a trampoline to other exciting projects. And my sense is, if you can say to a teacher, that idea you have, here's some money to help make it happen, it is engaging.
It's a startup. It's a startup. Sometimes that's all that's needed.
Interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts or questions that I should be asking? And just to be clear, this is a webinar for community development agents who want to know more about grants and measures.
Yeah, I think if the community development agents are close with the school administrators that they're working with, I think I've said it a few times in many little either interviews like this or speaking to future administrators. You don't have to have all the answers. You just have to know where to find those answers. And I think for community development agents, if they have a good working relationship with the administrators that they're with, that they know a bit, but they don't have to know everything. They just have to know, okay, well, who can I go and see to get this information? And if whether it be the school administrator, whether it be the liaison person at the school board level that is responsible for mesures, student services and complementary services, depending on the school board, that's where most in our regards, the CDAs are attached to student services. So knowing where to get information is probably the most important thing, rather than trying to know everything, because you won't. There's just too much information out there. So a good working relationship and knowing where to get the information.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, Stephen. Well, thanks for taking the time to share your insights.
Anytime, Ben. You know that. Anytime we're at your availability.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. Okay, well, have a great school day.
You too.
Bye.
Well, have a great learn day.
That's it. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So, I guess now we have a few minutes now to have a bit of a conversation, and I wanted to see if any of the participants, any of the CDAs participating now had any questions about what Stephen brought up or what we've talked about at the start of this webinar, or any insights, things that you have experienced yourselves in your own experience writing grants or applying for measures. Thoughts?
Yeah, I could share something, especially to the last point that Stephen made. One thing that I realized worked with me is, even though you might have this great idea, if you don't have the proper people to help you out, the proper support, it's not going to work out. What I would suggest is that share the grants that we have with your support staff, with the teachers, with the administrators, and then see who bites on it. Because if somebody bites on it and they're like, oh, I really like this one, well then boom, there's your collaborator right there. There's something that you can work with together. Almost all the grants that I applied for, I was never by myself. It was always with a teacher who had this idea in mind, or with the administrator who had this idea in mind, and we worked on this together. All what I had to do is just share the information and then see who bites, pretty much.
Wonderful. Great advice, David. Other thoughts, ideas, questions? Angela, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing on the same line as David, is putting it out there, seeing which teachers are interested in certain activities and grants and things that they want to do, and then you can work together. Like with the Mesure 15115, I worked alongside 2 teachers, one to create a letter of support, the other one to help me apply for the grant, to know, and working together, trying to put the meat on the bones of what we want to say together. And I think that collaboration is key, and getting the information out there, like David said.
So I want to dig a little bit deeper, and this idea of collaboration will come up later, but how did you communicate to the school staff in a way that wasn't overwhelming? Because we all know sometimes you send emails with a link, it doesn't necessarily go somewhere. Was there something you did that kind of engaged people to be like, oh, this is something I want to get involved in? Angela, go ahead.
Well, what I would do with Maggie, the principal, is if she hears about a grant, she'll send it to me. I'll look into it, and then I'll create a blurb, and we'll put it in the TGIF. So that, it's a good way of, they're getting all that information on one sheet, and we're not bombarding them with constant emails. And then if they want more information about it, or a link or anything, they can come and see me, and we can talk about it and work from there.
Great. Ruby.
I think it goes back to actually cultivating the relationships with your staff. From the beginning of the year, make a point of going into your school and spending a few minutes with each teacher to find out what they're doing for the year, what their themes are, what their new ideas are. Maybe do that at the beginning of the year, and then again in January. And it's by finding out what they're interested, and then you make notes, keep that in mind, and then when you see something, specifically target that person, send them an email or go back and see them and say, hey, I've got something for you, are you interested?
Great advice. Relationships. Other questions or insights before we move it on? Okay, that's there'll be time for more discussion soon. So this is actually the comments that were made was actually a great segue to where we're going to go next. So just to confirm, Bobby, you can see the screen again?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Okay, so now that we've kind of identified grants that might meet a need in our school community, our CLC school, it's important to prepare before you start writing the grant, because it can take up time, and time is valuable. So it's important just to realize, of course, each application process is different. So before you do anything, it's good to read the application very carefully and answer basic questions like, is your school eligible? Sometimes it takes a foundation to be able to receive the grant, and be aware that some school boards have their own foundation. So that's a workaround. When's the deadline to submit? What is the funder looking for? And that includes thinking about the keywords and the objectives that are written into the grant. And it's a good practice to kind of mirror the language back to almost when they talk about well-being, that you talk about well-being. When they talk about student success, then you are kind of mirroring that back. And then also just to be clear about what is not admissible. So if you want to provide opportunities for teachers to have release time, check if that's possible. Can you buy food? These are all things you want to think about ahead of time so you don't waste your time applying for something that doesn't fit what you want to do.
What do you need to think about before applying? The biggest one is the first one. Do you have the time to manage the grant? Some grant processes can be very long, can be very big, especially when you're applying for something, for a grant that's, $10,000 or more. Sometimes you need to share that task. You need a team of people to work on the different components of the grant. I remember applying for one where you needed to have a mock-up of what you were going to be creating. People needed to, actually create something in 3D that we then needed to submit. I didn't have time to do that. Could I find somebody to do that? So look at, can you manage the grant itself? Then who is going to be helping you with this project that you are applying for? Do you have a team in place for that? How many teachers do you need? Do you need external partners? Do you need parents coming in? Make sure that you have all those moving parts taken care of so that you can put that information into your application. What else do you need? Perhaps you haven't thought about it. Like, do you need volunteers? Where are you going to get those volunteers from? We often forget that students are not counted as volunteers during the school day, even if we give them the release time. They are not our volunteers if the project is happening during school hours. Perhaps they can be that after school on the weekend, but do you need to look around for other resources? Do you need building material? Do you, what is it that you need? And then what other information do you still need to get before you actually go for the application? Who do you need to ask? We've mentioned many partners already, your principal, perhaps somebody at the school board. Get those answers. And as Stephen mentioned earlier, you're not expected to have these answers. Don't feel that it's all on your shoulders to answer these questions. Find the people who will be able to help you to answer the questions. One thing that I would also recommend before you apply, can you print out the application process? Sometimes you can go in, start plugging in your information, save it, and then come back as needed. Either you don't have time to finish it right then, or you've realized you're missing something in terms of information. Sometimes you can save, come back. Other times you cannot save your application. It's going to disappear on you. So find out, can you print it ahead of time so that you have that list of questions that you need to answer? Okay. Next, thank you. Now this telephone, although it's old school, it tells us your job is about building relationships as a CDA. One thing that you can often do, and we don't always think of it, is contact the funder. Explain to them what your project is. Ask them if they think this will qualify. What do you need to know? Is there something that perhaps is missing from many of the applications that they see? What would they recommend that you do? Is there something specific that they can steer you towards? They will often appreciate the fact that you're doing this research ahead of time so that your application can be as complete as you can make it. Also, when your application does come in, they might recognize the name of the school, of the project, your name as the applicant. That is a good thing. Okay, so you're building those relationships and you are ensuring that they will remember you, remember your project. It comes down basically to making sure that, your CLC is recognized, that they remember the name of your CLC, it's a good tool.
Absolutely. And maybe I'll just build off what Bobby just said, which is let me start again. The funder is a person just like you and me. It's their role to help grant these funds to help important things happen, whether supporting youth or community and different things like that. And part of their job is making sure that the funds are distributed in a good way. So as Bobby was saying, like, it's okay to have that conversation. It's not cheating, it's building relationships, it's helping make sure that there's like a mutually reciprocal relationship which is being built, where they're giving money to a organization that's going to do good work with it, and you as an organization are going to send results that show that the money is being spent in a good way.
Can I add something? Let me just add something. Often the funders themselves have criteria. They need to disperse a certain amount of money per year to different organizations. And when it comes to their year end as well, if they haven't spent this money, like, there's pressure on them to spend it as well from their stakeholders. So oftentimes, when you contact them and you say, how can I better my application? Does my project fall into your parameters? They actively want to help you receive the grant, because it is something that they can take care of. They can show, I am actively helping, disperse these funds where my stakeholders want them to go. So pick up the phones, send an email, make that contact, because it will actually be appreciated.
Absolutely. So we're going to shift right now into talking about the language of grant writing. And one thing I wanted to say as well is that, when you get into the mindset of grant writing, it's okay to use reusable text. Many of the things that grants ask you to submit are kind of cut and paste text that you may have crafted ahead of time. So for example, thinking about what the purpose or the mission of a CLC school is, what is the goal that you're working towards, what different strategies or results are you looking for? So these are all things that you might have in a file on your computer that, every time you can just cut and paste it, make sure you adapt it specifically for the project or the grant itself or the measure, but it's not something you need to start from scratch every time. So thinking about the language of grant writing as well, it's important, just like in CLCs, we talk a lot about goals and outcomes. The same thing happens for grants and foundations, and the ministry as well. And I just want to highlight, something they call results-based management, which is kind of thinking with the end goal in mind. And it's good practice to kind of shift from talking about activities to talking about results. So in the CLC world, we're all about activities and strategies, but we also talk about that these strategies are going to result in something important happening. So the example here is that, when we hold a nighttime gym, when we open up the gym for families as an activity, what we're actually talking about is helping support families and young people that lead healthier lifestyles. So these are the types of language that we want to say, that you're not paying for supervision of a gym being open at night. It's, the grant is helping support a community which is healthier. And as well, just becoming familiar with terms around, what is the purpose, the goal, inputs, outputs, or deliverables, indicators, measurements. These are all things that you want to become familiar with, so that you have kind of a ready answer, or you're able to work with your team to talk about how you're going to know that there is an impact. Also, just speak about how to identify needs. So, what you don't, grants and measures that you apply for should be based upon needs in your school and your community. Ways you can identify needs include talking to the school teams, the principal, and asking whether it complements the school success plan and the vision of the school. You want to make sure it's connected and not just out in left field. As well, you can look at community data. A lot of that is available from the CHSSN or from different partners you might be working with, and as well tapping into school data like Our Voice or other health data or academic success as well. I also want to kind of highlight the importance of making sure that it's a grant in search of a need and not a need in search of a grant. It's very easy, we're going to share this list of measures grants with you. It's very easy to see these kind of like fun looking grants with $10,000 available. Don't go chasing the money if there's no purpose behind it. It will just create work and the effort, the work, and it just will not be satisfying in terms of meeting those needs. It's great to have $10,000, but if all of a sudden you need to convince people to participate in a project that isn't really helpful, then that's not a great use of time. So you've written this grant, you've gotten it, amazing. Now what? Really you want to just verify what's required of you as follow-up, complete all the necessary reports on time. Often grantees will require updates that you'll want to really be on top of. Make sure you follow the budget parameters set by the organization and keep to what you submitted. On that note, if you need to change what you submitted because the situation has changed or the reality of putting together the project is different, it's okay to call up your contact at the organization and just have a conversation. And most likely they'll be able to adjust. But it is important that you don't keep it a secret. And at the end of the year, when you send your final report, they're like, well, you said you were going to spend money on this, and instead you spent it on something else. Those are things you want to be proactive about. As well, make sure that when you write your reports, they're clear, they're well written. They don't need to be long, but they should be, again, explain what you did and leave a positive impression. If you do a good job with one grant, there's a very good chance that you're going to be in the running for future grants as well, because they know this is an organization that you can give money to. And lastly, I do want to kind of reiterate this results-based language and remember that activities are not results. So you might want to talk about what you did in terms of the activity. You held nighttime activities for youth. What happened because you did it? The result: youth lead healthier lifestyles. And how do you know? Well, drug and alcohol abuse was lowered by 20% based upon an indicator that shows that. So just really, I want to just keep reinforcing this idea that it's not about the activity, it's about the result that the activity leads to. And that's what's really important.
So what we want you to take away is that it is not a scary process. It is not an impossible process, a daunting process. Just prepare yourself. Don't wait until the last minute to get it done. Give yourself enough time. Find out when the grant applications close, when they are due, and give yourself a timeline. You want to plan out what it is you're going to write. So that means you need to do your research ahead of time. You need to know, why am I applying? What is the need in your school that you are trying to satisfy? How do I tell this in a story that my funder will understand and want to help me with? Get the answers you need from the people around you. And again, your principal, school board, your partners in the community, different partners perhaps who are working in your building with you. If you have partners working on mental health initiatives, perhaps they can be your partners in this grant writing process as well. So find the information that you need ahead of time. Don't be shy. Make contact with the funder. Ask them for their insights, for their ideas, to help steer you in the right direction. Be organized with your material. Have everything clearly marked so that you can find it when you're looking for it. And know why you're applying. Okay, as Ben said, don't just chase the money, because it's nice to end up with $10,000 for your school. But if you can't use it in the way that it was meant to be used, that becomes a burden rather than a gift. And lastly, don't let rejections get you down, okay? Here as well, if you have not been given this grant, find out why. What was it in your project that did not meet their qualifications? Again, I really believe funders will appreciate you calling them to find out why you didn't qualify. Keep in mind also that although some grants are given out every year, some are cyclical, perhaps every 2 years, every 3 years. Sometimes the project itself doesn't qualify. Again, find out why, but give yourself all the information you can get so that the next time you want to apply, you've been able to fill in those gaps that perhaps disqualified you this time around. Daniela Scopa used to say that grant writing can be fun. I don't know about making it fun, but it is something that you can enjoy doing because it allows you to find out more about your needs, find out more about your partners, get a team going so that you can do it to the betterment of your school. Oh, Ben, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Speaking of Daniela Scopa, who was a community development agent at Lakeside for last year, I guess I want to recognize that I learned a lot from her and also from Kim Buffett. We were going through some of the different files on grant writing, and definitely were inspired by a lot of how they conceptualize the art of grant writing. Speaking of going back to the files, I found a document that I created about 5 or 6 years ago for a workshop called The Rules of the Road for Grant Writing. And I thought it would be cute around talking about just doing a one-pager around things to think about. So again, like, think about the roadblock, like you don't have a partner, there's no internal support, and you're chasing the money, like don't do it. And then also just think about like detours, shortcuts, like yield, like slow it down and then stop. So these are all things to think about. And this is a one-pager that we'll share with you, but it was kind of me trying to be a bit cute on the theme of driving and grant writing that might be useful as a one-pager. So I think that's about it. We're going to stop sharing for a second. Thank you. And time for discussion. So just to give a quick time check, we're going to keep talking to about 11:15. We're going to have a group discussion, and then Bobby and I and anyone else who wants to stick around to continue the conversation, we will be there. So before we continue, we have a few questions and an activity to do. Any other questions or insights that came along that you can think about from this presentation?
Just a quick question. I know on the Learn website, there's a very valuable document called Sources of Funding for CLC Initiatives. How often does that get updated? Because a couple of the deadlines is written 2021. So I was like, and then, or is there another place to find out other sources of funding for us?
So the truth of the matter is it gets updated about once a year, and kind of depends on when it's kind of due to be updated again. But not making excuses, but the link is usually pretty good, and it's just also a fact that sometimes the grantees kind of update it only when they get their act together as well. But yeah, we apologize that's not always up to date, but it's always a work in progress.
I didn't want to point fingers or anything, but what the idea that I had, because I think what really helped me out in some successful grants that I had received was when I was able to talk to other CLC or CDAs who have applied successfully for those grants. So if there's, maybe we could add another column and saying like, these were the CLCs that did apply for these grants successfully too, with your contact information. And then we could contact those people and be like, hey, how did it work? What worked with you guys? Why did you apply for those grants? Because I learn best just by talking with other of my colleagues.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's, yeah, I was just gonna say that that's a very good idea, David, and I put it down, I marked it down. My suggestion would also be, because even sometimes funders' pages are out of date. I've been visiting several, and even some funders themselves don't renew their sites until they get like the next funding period organized. I looked at a few of them that were back to 22, like January of 22. And, kind of in small writing at the very, very bottom, it says next application period opens in March of 23. So, look at that as well sometimes and just keep checking. But we'll definitely look at this, creating some sort of a category or a column.
And just a side note, which I was going to say anyways, is that Bobby and I are going to be hosting sessions every 6 weeks starting in January. So the first one's January 17th. I'll send out an email about that. I know Catherine sent out all the webinars coming up till December. So please check your inboxes because there's stuff we have lined up. But January 17th, we're going to just kind of do a drop-in. So it's kind of like an open workshop-y idea of like discussions and whatever people want to talk about and talk with each other. And we're going to do that every 6 weeks.
Other questions or comments? And then what I'm going to do right now is I'm just dropping in links to those 2 documents that we mentioned. So, sorry, just give me 1 second.
Yeah, no, David, I would say the broad strokes of like the biggest organizations that PRT identifies generally stays the same. And those kind of smaller nuanced ones that are kind of more local, I would kind of check in with your other CDAs in your school board because they're probably something you could share there.
So, before I go on, sorry, I keep on saying, any last questions or comments before we go on with a little activity?
I have one more thing to say. I was just
Sure,
thinking,
go for it.
I know it's an OMR thing. I don't want to get into that, but when I was listening to Bobby talk about getting rejected, just side note, you put the grants that you got rejected from in your OMR. It's not the ones you got funding for. So just keep that in mind. And I'm sure Catherine will cover that in her OMR session she's hosting soon.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an example of something you spend time on. So you want to make sure it's recognized. So Bobby and I came up with a short activity, which is as community development agent to consider a need in your school and community. And what I would love everybody to do right now is to, in the chat, kind of type out kind of what that higher level need is. So whether it's, healthy living, mental health and wellness, transitions, we can think of all these different things. I would love if you could kind of write in the chat what kind of need that you have a sense is needed in your school community. And then we're going to go have another activity from there. There might be many, just choose one.
Yeah, David, I'm looking at the grants list. It looks pretty up to date for 2022. If the website isn't updated date, yeah, we just leave the old ones, I guess. But yeah, I guess on the roll.
So okay. So mental health and wellness, nutrition and mental health, healthy eating, too many sugary snacks at our school. Okay, this is great. Nutrition. So amazing. Mental health. So health and wellness, which includes like nutrition and fitness as well. So what I want to suggest that we do, you'll notice there's 2 links in the chat. One is for the measures and one is for kind of feature grant opportunities that the PRT has put together over time. And like, let's take, I want to say 5 minutes and kind of identify a grant or a measure that we think might be useful in terms of meeting that need, and then we'll have a discussion from there. So thinking, so the kind of task is for the next 5 minutes to kind of, quietly go through those two lists and just identify whether there's a grant or a measure that might help you meet that need. And I'll also just say that sometimes the need and what's eligible, there could be like creativity. So for example, wellness and active and moving, you can kind of spin that a few different ways. But let's kind of do that for 5 minutes, and then we'll kind of share results. And knowing that people are in the same ballpark around health, nutrition, fitness, mental health, that we might be able to kind of identify ways forward with that. So it's currently 11 o'clock. At 11:05, let's check back in and see if we need more time or go from there. So yeah, let's look at it.
And I don't have, it tells me that I can't get into one of them.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay.
It is I'll tell you which one. 1 second, just let me go back up and click on it. It's the first link, the measures one.
Okay, so I will resolve that.
Thank you.
I'll send you a link in 1 second.
Thanks.
Yeah. Let's try again.